It's not even April, and yet Carlton, Melbourne and Essendon already find themselves in hot water. Matthew Lloyd on the solutions of how to get themselves out. But we start tonight with exclusive details from Nine News' Tom Morris on the most talked about player in the competition, Jamarra Ugle-Hagan, plus the concerns for another star number one pick. It's Footy Classified, and it starts now. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Footy Classified. Some breaking news shortly from Tom Morris. But first, let's get to our star-studded panel. One of the best journalists in the country, Damien Barrett, the two-time Alf Brown winner. Damo, welcome to you.
Good evening, Sam.
Norm Smith medalist and Brownlow medalist Jimmy Bartell, welcome to you, James.
Good evening, Sam.
And the 12-time leading goal kicker from the Essendon Football Club, the Bombers legend himself, Matthew Lloyd.
Thanks, Sam.
Lauder, great to have you as always.
Yes, Sam, earlier this month you revealed details of the breakdown in relationships between Jamarra Ugle-Hagan and key Western Bulldogs officials. And tonight, as we introduce Tom Morris, that rift appears to have even widened.
Yeah, the rift is an interesting word, Damo. Certainly they remain a long way apart, the Western Bulldogs, Jamarra Ugle-Hagan. And what I can tell you tonight is it revolves almost entirely around social media. Now, the Western Bulldogs don't particularly have a huge issue with Jamarra Ugle-Hagan going to the NBL last Wednesday, going to the NRL on Thursday, or even not going to the AFL on Friday. These flexible arrangements are in place for trainings, for games, and for other parts of Jamarra Ugle-Hagan's life. But their main issue with Jamarra Ugle-Hagan is the fact that he's posting on Instagram at all these events that he's at and yet not going to the football. He posted at the basketball, he posted at the rugby league, and he was even posting at the pub on Friday night instead of being at the centenary game. Why is he not at the football, you might ask? The reason is because he has a level of anxiety that's attached to going to a football game with a big crowd and lots of Western Bulldogs footballers around. The other element here, of course, is when he's going to be back playing and when he's going to go to a game again. And the people I speak to today around Jamarra Ugle-Hagan, they can't confirm if he will be at Carlton versus the Western Bulldogs on Friday night or when he'll be playing again. And the last element here, which I think is really important, there's a lot of people around Jamarra Ugle-Hagan that are really trying to help him, from the club, from his own personal circles, and there's a wide-held belief now, and there's a real sense, Sam, that Jamarra needs to help himself, and it needs to be soon, or his career might peter out and he might be in another club next year. But it all revolves tonight around social media, and he's been advised by those close to him to stop posting, or at least limit his posting, so as not to tell the world that he's not a professional footballer in the way he once was.
So who's told him that, Tom? People high up at the club?
People high up everywhere. People close to him from the management side and people at the club. They've spoken to him, he understands that, and it's their hope, and this is all around him, that he won't be posting on social media as much going forward, given what we've seen the last week.
So, Jimmy, you were part of a famously strong culture for a long time at the Cats. I know you don't have all the details, but I just wonder, you're a teammate of his, you're a Marcus Bontempelli. What are you saying to him? Because this situation it seems like it is evolving to a point where they're drifting so far apart. Can they get back on the same page?
Yeah, you hope so for him and for Jamarra as a person, and we've got to deal with that firstly. But my concern is, as Tom touched on, there's only so much you can help people. They've got to actually come and want to be helped as well. So the only question I'd be asking is, who is in his corner? Like, who are the people who are guiding him through? And if it's not Marcus Bontempelli, who are the people who he trusts and who people think will steer him in the right direction?
Tom, do you think he'll ever play another game for the Western Bulldogs?
I think it's looking less and less likely. And I'm looking forward to asking Luke Beveridge this tomorrow. But there's a real level of doubt as to whether he'll play again this year. Then will he be at the club next year? I'd be more likely than not that he'll be elsewhere.
So, Tom, is he maintaining his training? So, say the midpoint of the year, he feels in a great space to come back and play. Is he maintaining his training sessions at the Bulldogs, or have they said maintain your training outside?
No, he's welcome in the club whenever he wants. He's welcome to come to games whenever he wants. The flexibility is afforded to him because they understand this is a complex situation that isn't linear, and he is struggling, and as a result, he might not be able to make every club engagement that he otherwise would.
Fascinating story, Tom. You've been right across it, and you will be part of the panel. Luke Beveridge, the Western Bulldogs coach, live 8:30 on Footy Classified on Gem tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
So from one number one draft pick to another, and the situation that is surrounding Harley Reed, who has this evening been served with a please explain by the AFL for a middle finger gesture to someone in the crowd. Lloydie, you sat here last week and you were really fair and reasonable about how you would be approaching that. That's more hugging than anything else. A week later, another indiscretion, albeit minor. How are you feeling now?
Yeah, outside of giving the bird to someone in the crowd, my opinion last week was he's young. Let him go with it. We piled in too much because he had one poor game. But watching him for a second week, I didn't think his behaviour had changed, where his performance is being influenced in a negative way because he's wasting far too much energy, wanting to fight others, wrestle others, playing with a real chip on his shoulder, which is not helping his footy, like wanting to get in the face of McInerney when he didn't need to and things like that. So I would now get him in if I was the coach, Andrew McQualter, this week and say, your footy's not great. What you were doing on weekends isn't helping what you're doing, and give him a stern warning. Like, go and watch Nick Dacos. I know where you're a different sort of player, but he focuses on nothing but the football and gets absolute everything out of himself. And I feel that if he continues to carry on like that and doesn't listen to, say, a McQualter or his team leaders, is he trying to self-sabotage himself and his career at the West Coast Eagles? Or is he just immature? Because I think that I've thought back to Jason Horne-Francis today, and Jason
and his time at North Melbourne,
where he didn't respect those around him. Yeah, this is
so this is a couple of weeks ago, the first game against the Gold Coast.
Like, half time, you're getting belted by 40 or 50 points, and he's chirping away. Like, to me, this
Oscar Allen, the captain, coming and consoles.
Was fantastic, and I remember this is the same thing. Todd Goldstein, Jason Horne-Francis, but Jason didn't want to listen to anybody at North Melbourne. So I think it's a real test for West Coast Eagles and Jason and their relationship over the rest of this season. It's a must-watch for me. How much does he want to dig in?
It is a very similar comparison, Lotta, because Jason Horne-Francis still had the 1 year of a contract to run, as Harley Reed does, under a different arrangement of there being a 3-year contract to be signed. And for you to be raising that as a fear right now, the parallels are stark when it comes to what the outcome was for the North situation.
Because the noise won't go away, that he doesn't want to be there, OK? So that's why I'm watching this extra closely about, does he listen and toe the line and be a professional right to the end, or does he get to a point where they go, you know what, he's a pain in the you-know-what and we should move him on while we can?
I'm interested in your words about, is he self-sabotaging?
Yes.
So you're saying from an external perspective, without all the necessary information that none of us actually have right now, you fear that there's an element of him not liking being over there so much that he's actually acting in a way which could help him get traded.
Yeah, like people talk around him around the huddles. He's disengaged at huddles.
At the quarter times and three-quarter times.
And breaks and all those sorts of things. Okay. And again, I'll be shocked if he isn't being called in by senior leaders and his coach if they let this behaviour continue, because it's not helping him.
When you refer to senior leaders, though, and we discussed this a couple of weeks ago on this program about the same matter, you've got a captain who's also determining his own future. How can he look him in the eye and say, what are you up to? We want you to stay, because he doesn't know if he's staying himself, Oscar Allen.
Yeah, and it's incredibly difficult. Frustrations of a 19-year-old, and we've said this before, we're asking for a mature head on a 19-year-old's shoulders. And you looked at the scores on both of those edits, they're getting pounded. Those two guys have been the dominant players, which have probably carried sides to victory. And all of a sudden, you're being asked to be, as an 18 and 19-year-old, the difference maker in a side that's getting pounded. So a little bit of patience. I agree, Lloydie, where you're going with it, but I'm probably allowing even more patience. Who's the person at the club to guide him through it?
But I'm not questioning anything that he has to do anymore with the football.
Yeah, but I reckon this is the first time he's experiencing any of this. And at 19...
But who is it, Jimmy? It's not the captain now, because the captain doesn't know whether he's there.
Yeah, but my point being is, this is the first time he's going through this in his professional and sporting life as being... It's a real bloody struggle. So how do I deal with it? How did I used to deal with it? I'd take someone down to full forward and I'd just bully him and we'd get over the line. This is completely new. He's trying to work his way through it, so that's probably why he's acting out. He's probably thinking...
If he's told, though, play the ball, is it that difficult?
No, it's not that difficult. I'm just explaining why there's probably a sense of frustration, or we're seeing the bird or the silly free kicks, which he'll no doubt work through, but you don't know what you don't know. He's 18 months into an AFL career.
The Demons, as we move on to, have got their own set of issues on and off the field. On the field, Lordo, they've promised change, that they would evolve and not be the same Melbourne that we've seen for the last 3 years or so.
Yeah, heard a lot of words, Sam, and I heard some more. Here was Simon Goodwin talking over the weekend.
I know it's going to be a story and a narrative. It's, in some ways, when you're 2 weeks in and you haven't seen the change you want, everyone's going to go down that path. But, you know, we're confident with the work we've done over the summer. that we'll start to see it. You know, last week we played in a pretty wet game, and tonight we were nowhere near the level around the ball to give us the looks that we'd like. You know, that's tough to watch, and we've got to be better at how we arrest momentum, especially around the centre square when that time happens. But that was the disappointing part, that I felt all day that was coming.
So Melbourne had 3 more entries than North Melbourne, yet were belted by 10 goals by a side who has found winning very, very difficult. And it's, again, no change for me. Like, this is
How many times have we seen this since the grand final, Lauder?
Yeah, I reckon
2022, 23, 24, and now round 2 of 25.
I've done it countless times, and I think, you know, I would have thought the review at the end of the season challenged Simon and his game style, but they continually launch from halfway, Jimmy.
Yeah, but they've done it before in the past, and I think that's what we're highlighting. They've got the ability, they've been coached, it's the same coach in the 2 years where they were incredibly good. So premiership year and prelim year was their ability to hit up that target, and most of those edits were from senior experienced players who were just dumping the footy. So you've actually got to hold them to account. You've got to hold it in review sessions. You've got to do it in training. You've got to practice it and just go, but we're not just blasting the ball. That game has gone a couple of years ago where you just dump it in.
I've heard you say numerous times over the last few years, colloquially, you know, geez, I'd hate to be a forward playing in their system. I just wonder, is Bailey Fritsch's decline emblematic of his teams? This is a guy who I watched kick 6 in Perth in a grand final. He kicked 65 goals in that year. Since basically round 15 last year, he has been so far off that player.
Yeah, I'd jump on him in a heartbeat to get him to my club.
Of course.
Yeah, so I think, he's very much a factor. Yes, he'd like to be better himself, but, put him in one of those teams that moves the ball better, and he'd be a far better player than he is right now.
And then there was another storyline, Damo, that emerged after the game, and people asking the question of why did the coach, Simon Goodwin, bring up the private life of his captain?
He got beaten by a really good opponent today. But you also got to realise that, you know, in life, there are other things that are going on. So, you know, we'll support Max. He's a great person. He's a great leader. And, you know, there's a backstory to everyone's performance.
From a media perspective, I think that was a far from ideal outcome for Simon Goodwin to go down that path. But I honestly feel that his intent was sound, that it was at the core of it to protect his player, who ultimately is a friend as well in Max Gawn. And I think it just got big on him as he started talking, and he ventured down this excuse path. He then got semi-specific with a background reason that Max probably didn't need nor had asked for. And Max himself will need to address this tomorrow because he's on a Triple M weekly commitment tomorrow where he will address it. But I don't think it's ideal that it happened, but I do feel for Simon Goodwin that the moment itself just got big as he was talking, and that's just my take on it.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Damo. The whole word, it's a narrative. They've tried to shift how the outside is looking at Melbourne. You know, we're love, you know, it's a lot of love, we're open, we're vulnerable. And I think he was trying to play down that path, Simon Goodwin. You know, we're really open, we're feeling for our player here. He's got stuff going on in the background. That might be a bit of a reason why he was going poor, but he probably could have cut it off 2 sentences earlier.
It just seemed like for all his experience, I think that's why we were surprised. If it was a first-year coach that had looked to defend one of his players, but Simon Goodwin, you would think he's so deliberate in his press conferences. I think that's why we were shocked.
I think Damo nailed it. He meant well, so I think you just get on with it.
I think the other question from the game is, and I'll point this to you, Jimmy, have the Roos finally turned the corner? Alistair Clarkson had his thoughts after the game.
Oh, it's validation for our footy club that a lot of hard work and a lot of people are doing a lot of great work behind the scenes and our players too, not just our off-field staff. Very, very satisfying because, you know, they're a high-quality midfield and it's really, really hard to get on top of them. I thought X was fabulous in the ruck against Max, and that's where the ascendancy came from. I think we had 4 centre-bounce goals in the last quarter, and that really broke the back of the Melbourne side.
Yeah, he was right there, Alistair Clarkson. They kicked 7 total goals from centre bounce, and this is a great start to the year. This is what we've all been waiting for, an improvement across all areas. And you look at the players, you know, Combin at centre-half back was excellent. Sherry, All-Australian squad ruckman, picking up. Larky's a gun, Curtis and Zerha, and you add through that big midfield mix. It's been a good 2 rounds, but we're young emerging sides. They've got to maintain it and sustain it throughout the year. So that's the benchmark for them. Let's see that week in, week out from North Melbourne, because they're very easy on the eye when they play that style of footy.
And it has to be the benchmark, doesn't it? I mean, they've got a tough game against Adelaide this coming week, and I don't think they need to win the game, but they need to perform better than they have in the past 3 seasons when it's all said and done. I mean,
you've been harsh on the.
I have. I don't back away from that, Sam. And look, I acknowledge what happened yesterday. It was fantastic, and the way the leaders stood up and Tristan Xerri took that game over. He'd already been close to best on ground at 3/4 time, then dominated the opening stanza of that last term to set it up. And I think, look, massive ticks for what they did yesterday, because they didn't do it the previous week against the Bulldogs when they had the chance to at three-quarter time. They did it against Melbourne, but it needs to be sustained. This has to be now an 8 to 10 win season if they're to want us to all believe.
8 to 10.
Well, why not?
8 to 10 wins for North this year?
Well, if they want us to convince us they've turned the corner, it has to be in that zone.
They won 3 last year, was it?
Yeah.
So that's a massive jump.
I'd be looking at percentage, much like the Lions did when Chris Fagan started, because that actually reflects the balance on both sides of the ball. So percentage closer to 90, the wins would be handy.
The Blues were a lot better in round 2 than they were in round 1, and the comparisons around the team that beat them, the Hawks, I think are fascinating. And you can juxtapose game styles, you can juxtapose the talents of their lists, but you can also compare the way that their coaches deal and talk about losses. So the first clip you're going to see is Sam Mitchell after getting belted by the Gold Coast Suns when they were 0-5 at the start of last year, with Michael Voss after the game at 0-2 this year.
You're just not going to be able to compete against anyone the way we played tonight, and that's just completely unacceptable way to play, and we should be past games like that.
I'm still pretty happy with our fight. There's a fair bit of determination in the group throughout the night. It's hard to say value process over scoreboard and not look at the process and what we want to value. Ball movement, our braveness, willingness to kill moments, even when we had moments where we were disappointed, that's what we've got to keep reinforcing.
And so, Damo, that was an added layer after the game, is that Carlton, through their social media, actually showed us a vision of what the coach was saying to his players. And as you could see from that, was very positive towards them, despite the loss. And I think that drew the ire of some Carlton fans.
Yeah, it did. I get why he's doing it. He's so true to himself, Michael Voss. And I understand, Sam, that we all criticise him. We criticised him last week. We'll continue to criticise him until this team gets back on a winning streak. It's now lost 9 of its last 11 games, if you include last year as well. So it's a horrendous scoreline they've now got. But he's just staying true to himself. And he's going to blast his way out by way of his intent, the way he knows. That's what he's doing there.
And he's trying to blast his way out of the Cripps situation as well, because he was asked pre-game about why they continue to persist with Patrick Cripps in the ruck. I'm not sure he took too kindly to it.
Well, you would have noticed over the last couple of years he's played there a fair bit, so it's not unique. So I would imagine he'd play there still a little bit from time to time, yeah. He won a Brownlow medal doing it, so it goes all right.
He won a Brownlow medal in the ruck. Did he do it as much as this year, Jimmy?
No, he didn't win a Brownlow medal in the ruck. He won the Brownlow medal and 2 Brownlow medals as being one of the most dominant contested football winners, first touch clearance players. And if you look at the numbers, Michael Voss is touching about how much time he spent in the ruck. Well, there's a stark difference there. We're at 17% this year compared to 1.5%. He was taking 4 a game and he's up to 15. And what this is doing is fatiguing him. And for me, I think it's costing Carlton around stoppages in important parts of the play. So if we have a look at our first one here, this is one of the earliest goals in the game. Do you know where I want to hit the ball if I'm Carlton and I'm really worried about Hawthorn? Is that man in the ruck right down in front. So if I'm coming to a contest as a Carlton player, I'm looking for Patrick Cripps deep in my back line and hitting the ball straight down.
And Jimmy, this is late in the game, so it's 10 minutes 44 to go. So he did one hit out. 10 minutes 35, he did another. 10 minutes 24, he did another. So this is the last quarter when he just continually is rucking. He actually gets a free kick there. So he and Watson, they have a few words, they're into each other. He's saying, yeah, I got you there, young fella. And then we fast forward this bit of play and it's a turnover. Carlton don't get the ball back. And look what he's doing after doing 4 ruck tap-outs in a row. He is exhausted. He is absolutely spent. He can't run. Have a look at him. So this is why we're saying he cannot ruck. Get somebody else to do it because he's not the midfielder you want him to be, and that's what he does walking back to the centre of the ground. Yeah. So this is why he cannot be there. And we're going to look at the magnets and what I would do personally. This is what I would do at Carlton, some moves to get some excitement, to get some generation into them. So Hollands and Walsh, I want to get some outside run, outside, just they're line breakers, these two, but they're in around traffic. He's at half back. So this is what they do at their best. So this is Hollands, if you can get him out on a wing. Can we see him running again, hitting the scoreboard a little bit more? This is him out, get it out to him, feed it. Can he kick a goal or two? So he's not the quality of Sam Walsh, but this is Sam Walsh. So cast your minds back to around 2021 time where, again, Get him out there. Don't have him around the contest, hacking the ball, getting dumped, picking himself up, all exhausted. That's Sam Walsh, and this is against Geelong also back then around that time. So kick it, run past, they can't go with him, get it back. So he's just getting hammered.
You're worried about Walsh, aren't you?
Yeah, I want him going for the next 10 years, Damon, but I just see a guy who's getting banged and crashed and isn't the player. So they're two moves. Those two go to the wing. You've got Kemp, Brodie Kemp, they tried. Like McCartney, he's not a key forward. And you've got Lewis Young, shouldn't be playing. So Youngs goes out. Kemp comes in, the full back, and then you load up your front half. Silvani, he's been as dangerous as anyone. With Curnow and Mackay, the small forwards with him. You've got Wiedering behind the ball. That's more an exciting side for me, Jimmy.
Well, I'm glad you highlighted, because I'm going to rely on these two players and the guy back there, Brodie Kemp, to give these guys a much better look. When you go live to the game, the thing that jumps out to me with Carlton is this grinding nature that they want to play. They actually make the ground really small for themselves in attack. It's reverse. Great turnover for Cottrell. But what I want to show here, when it flips behind the goals, you can count 12 players walking or behind the football. So if you were to draw a line across the ground, they have too many players behind the ball or where you want to actually go. This used to be called a no standing zone at Geelong. In and out, make the ground really big, because what the opposition then does is they're playing you 18 on 12. Because watch, Hawthorn, they get over this side of the contest. Look at this, all the Hawthorn players. We've got 3, 4 players, another one off to the side, and we're going to kick this ball in. We're playing the whole ground, 12 v 18. And watch as this kick comes into Curnow. 1, 2, 3, 4 Hawks, and they've got the whole ground to tack back through you. So you've got to widen the ground. If you're on the 45, don't get it, get out.
While we're on the brilliant vision, Jimmy, and while we're on Hawthorn, like what Sam Mitchell has done really, really well is the foot skills of Hawthorn compared to the rest of the competition. So they make kicks happen that other teams don't. So teams are slamming the ball for some reason more than I've seen before. But you watch them, they're under pressure. He doesn't panic, Ward. He just gets back and lowers his eyes and hits targets. And they don't have the most amazing forward line, but it's kicks like that to Jack Gunston, who's at the end of his career, which is making it easier for him. So D'Ambrosio, that is just coast-to-coast stuff because of the quality of it. When I'm looking at opposition kicks, so Jack Viney, Hawthorn wouldn't do that. They just wouldn't slam that ball on the boot like Jack Viney did there. Rowbottom, he did it 3 or 4 times. Unforgivable, would not be copped at Hawthorn under Sam Mitchell. Christian Petrarca, great player, but like danger at times. They can slam the ball on the boot. And then this one, Walshy, that's why I want him on the outside. Not good enough, which is why Hawthorn are at a different level to the rest of the teams by foot sound.
Unbelievable vision from both of you. It's not difficult, Damo, to know why those two were so successful as players, was it?
Super.
Vision like that. Terrific. Well, Lordy, you're going to have to go again with the Bombers after the break, because when we come back, red and bleak, the Bombers under the pumpers, the spotlight once again shines on their leadership. Feeling the heat, Damo with some news on friction between two clubs and the AFL, and Freo's vanilla game plan under the microscope after their devastating loss to the Swans. It's all on Footy Classified, and it's next.
Durham, his handball couldn't find Dersma. McGrath had a fumble. Another couple of fumbles. Handball missed the mark. They're under all sorts of pressure, the Bombers.
Not sure they're kicking him to get the ball well enough to play that game.
They just continue to be their own worst enemy, the Bombers. They're taking on options that aren't right, kicks that aren't there, making simple skill errors.
And maybe he gets reward for it for this time. He will get the goal he's been chasing late.
Kind of sums up the day. Adelaide have absolutely mauled them.
Welcome back to Footy Classified. Another tough day at the office for the Essendon Football Club, and they've been quite public in the vision that Brad Scott has, Damo, but are they soft launching maybe a mini rebuild here?
Well, they'd be retrofitting a rebuild, I reckon, Sam, because if what we saw on the weekend now lines up with the decision that they made out of nowhere to recontract Brad Scott until the end of 2027. And Brad Scott tonight on Fox Footy admitted to a point that there is a rebuild going on.
You can say what you want. I mean, the club always talk to me about, you know, what are we messaging? I mean, ultimately, you message through your action. And, you know, we made some changes at the end of last year with personnel, with list, chose to go to the draft. We hold 2 first-round draft picks this year, 2 second-round draft picks. I mean, I think it's pretty clear what we're doing, but I wouldn't concede that we're not capable of competing every week.
So that's the statement made after a really bad loss on the weekend, and the language which you've touched on, Sam, and the need to change behaviour and to improve standards in the footy club. We've just heard this ad nauseum, and I just think it's time that this club actually just works out what it is he's trying to do. And if it is a rebuild, say it, because it's not working, what this messaging is going on. With David Barham coming in 3 years ago, with Brad Scott using the Essendon edge, and then now we're meant to know that they've got 2 first-round draft picks next year. We're meant to be on this journey with them when it's just been constantly mixed messages the whole way through.
But I think
in my eyes.
But they've said that, though, for almost the last 12 months, haven't they? They need to go back and rework the list. Like, that was the whole point of getting back into the draft in this year. They clearly, according to Brad Scott's thinking anyway, don't have the right group of players to be achieving what they want to achieve.
Yeah, and they made a big song and dance about getting rid of one that they didn't like anymore, in Jake Stringer.
Yep.
And for behavioural reasons. Now, we're tiptoeing around that, but they patted themselves on the back when a group of players went overseas and paid their own way to have a leadership course and a leadership training camp. I mean, you get to the weekend, though, Lordo, and you've got one player yet again in the captain, Zach Merritt, who's the only standout performer of a pretty ordinary group.
Yeah, and Brad talked about your message through your actions, which he's talking about our upcoming hands, I suppose he's saying. We're pretty much going through that and going to the draft, and that's where we're at. But you also message through your actions on field, and no matter where you're at, you never waste a year. You never waste an opportunity. You don't waste a game. And to see what Richmond did to Carlton in round 1 with that side, it was just effort and it was pressure, and they've got to win. To see Essendon concede those marks they did, people at the game said it was like a game of circle work, but one side's the Adelaide Crows and one's Essendon. So they'd want to come out all guns blazing Thursday night, big stage, Port Adelaide. OK, it's round 2. Don't hang them on round 2.
No.
But you would want to come out breathing fire on Thursday night.
Yeah, this is core fundamental stuff. This is kicking off no steps. This is the stuff you get taught at under 14s. A bit, with your handball being able to. This is a handball at elite level that misses by 5 metres from 2 metres away. So it's not only list and recruiting, it's have you got the development, have you got the development plans right? Because you can keep bringing players in. We've seen clubs have hundreds of draft picks, but if the development's not right, it just goes nowhere.
Well, there's hundreds of draft picks. I mean, that's the thing. You've got to actually hit with the picks that you do have. I'm just not convinced in the last 5, 6, 7 years, Lordo, that they've been able to do that. I mean, the side that they played...
You go back 20 years, Sam, when it's all said and done.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. The side that they played on the weekend, you look at those guys that they've been able to hit with those picks. I mean, even Michelini at 17 looks like a good pick. Pedler at 11 looks like a good pick. Compare that to Essendon. Now, Caddy and Kako look like good players, but they've barely played, right? Sardis was at 11 clearances on the weekend, doesn't look like a pick 5. Hobbs doesn't look like a 13. Cox hasn't been sided. Perkins at 9 looks too high. And Reed, granted, has been injured. But that's grim viewing, Lordo, if you're an Essendon fan.
Yeah, the only issue with that, though, is if you have a look at Adelaide, most of those years that they got the picks, they're actually inside Essendon's. So we can highlight some really good players, but Draper's ahead of Kako, and they'll be right. Curtin's ahead of Caddy. Only Sardis and Michelini is the outside. The rest are all before them, maybe Pedler and Perkins. But what that means is where they're going, you either, as you're saying, the messaging, burn it down, rebuild it, and get really high picks and the top end point in, because we always hear every year from recruiters, there's even layers to the first round.
Who's their second best player?
I think Durham and Caldwell would fight for that. And you asked me today in a meeting, and I had to think about it. Now I've had more time, I'd name those 2. But at the time, I couldn't give you one.
And Durham and Caldwell are both good footballers, right? Like, good footballers. And the greatest amount of respect to both of them. But they probably shouldn't be the second and third best players on your list.
Yeah. And just on that...
I think that's fair, isn't it?
It is.
I'm big on environment. I don't think the environment has been good enough for players to thrive and prosper. So yes, there's misses there.
Development or wider?
All like culture, environment, development.
You're talking about connection, like that whole club of connection.
The whole club hasn't been right.
Why?
I don't know. I'm not sure why.
But it's as though Jake Stringer was the only problem, and we had to get rid of him.
Of course, he's not the only problem.
I mean, all that's done at this stage is lose them 42 goals a season in output.
Yeah.
And with Kyle Langford out, who's injured, he kicks 40 as well last year.
Yeah, and I even look at some of the key position players, and yes, Riley Thilthorpe. How many years has Thilthorpe been in the game for?
6.
6 years. So over the next 3 years,
5 or 6.
2 to 3 years, I want to see Harrison Jones. Well, he's become a monster. So I know everyone's different, and they'll have different sort of builds to what others. But, you know, I look at Hope Caddy, who was down the other end, says, gee, what about Phil Thorpe? What can I do over the next 24 months? Zach Reed, who was down that end, what can I do? Now, Dustin Fletcher wasn't huge, but he got really strong. Nick Cox, what can he do? Harrison Jones, I was drafted as a forward. What am I doing on a wing? How can I get stronger to become a key forward? So they're all the questions these guys need to ask, because they've been found out that they aren't to the level of AFL footballers that they need to be.
Do you expect them to beat Port Adelaide on Thursday?
Oh, not on what I've seen, no.
But you expect a different type of application?
Yes.
But for a club that's got its own problems right now too, Port Adelaide, I mean, it beat Richmond on the weekend, but coming off the really bad loss in round one, I mean, it should be a game that they should be at least competitive.
And we saw what St Kilda did. So anything's possible.
And to your point, Richmond in round one.
Yeah, with the right attitude, yeah.
Damo, things are heating up at AFL House over what happened with the game at the Gabba on the weekend. Tell us about it.
Well, 12:10 p.m. start local time in Brisbane in a period of the calendar which can be very, very humid, Sam. And these are the official degrees, and the humidity got up to a higher level than that, and it may have got close to 100. Now, officially, it was in the 70s. And I just want to say before I go any further, the AFL was happy to play this game, and I spoke to Laura Kane tonight saying the game was safe to be played, and that's an official stance from the AFL with correspondence with the Bureau of Meteorology. But I've spoken to both CEOs of both the clubs today, Don Pike at West Coast and Greg Swan at the Lions, and they both felt it was unfair almost. I mean, Don Pike, you'll be able to see here, says that there's players are being left exposed to risk, and he understands the complications with fixturing, but there were concerns, and specifically from a West Coast Eagles perspective, their two ruckmen in Bailey Williams and also Archer Reed were both incapable of playing because of cramping, because of that heat. And Greg Swan also too said that moving forward they will be seeking these games to be played at twilight and night. And Chris Fagan, the coach of the Lions, never wants to take any form of excuse or reasoning for a lacklustre performance, but did so post-match for that reason.
It was hot and humid. Oh, look, it's a bit unusual to be playing a game at midday in Brisbane. It's always going to be hot, particularly early in the year. I don't know the reasoning behind it, but I think it's pretty tough on players to expect them to be playing in the middle of the day like that. I don't think I've ever been involved in an AFL game that started at 12 o'clock, ever. That's 20-odd years. So unusual, but ask the AFL.
And look, they can say they're unlucky having that type of humidity at this time of year. It's not every day, but they do leave themselves exposed with that scheduling.
You still would have kicked 8?
No, I can't argue with that. Very, very strange. And why we're still at 2 games at 7:35 on a Saturday night is bizarre.
Yes, well, that's the refixturing of that Brisbane-Geelong game, isn't it?
I'm talking a number of weeks.
Yeah, most of it.
Oh, you don't like that? Okay. Fair enough. Strong stuff from Lordo and the rest of the panel. When we come back on Footy Classified, the spotlight on a Cats veteran as that Saints, of course, made the Cats suffer. And, of course, tomorrow night, as I mentioned, 8:30 live on Gem. It's Eddie, Tom Morris, James Hird and the special guest panellist. He's there for the whole show. Luke Beveridge. Cannot wait. It's Footy Classified tomorrow night. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Footy Classified. It was a fascinating contest out in the West. To finish the round, the Dockers falling just short to the Swans in what was an amazing finish. But the question has to be asked of Justin Longmuir. We were promised an updated game plan pre-season. Has it been delivered?
We played a pretty vanilla brand. It's interesting because all the other teams get the vision and be able to watch it from behind the goals. So we tried to keep it pretty vanilla, and we'll work on bits and pieces next week when we've got match sim and the vision's not released. We had some moments there that we just needed to send the ball to different areas, and youngish players getting caught up in moments at the moment, and we need to make sure that in those moments, whilst we would like to score, we need to make sure we're not left vulnerable behind the ball.
Yeah, 65 points again has us questioning a bit of that ball movement. Is it still vanilla? Pav came out a couple of weeks ago or last week saying that, we've got it wrong. They're trying to connect with forward handball. And they certainly got that in the first quarter. And I thought, here we go. They've dropped the vanilla. This forward handball is what they need more of, because the way their half forwards really get up the ground and stream back. Look at the space out the back for the big kahuna here, Tracy. On a very good defender there in Tom McCartan. So more of the forward handball for Freo. Look at the release again. They initially would go back in recent years, but Bolton takes the game forward, finds Murphy Reed. And look at that. That's all you want as a forward, like quick ball movement. You get the one forward release which allows the forwards to really be proactive off that.
What I ask, though, is why do they not score 15 goals? Like, they kick 4 goals in the first quarter and then 5 goals for the rest of the game. So they lack a connection piece for mine that doesn't allow them to go to where they want to go to. Because we've talked about it today, Damo and I, they have all the pieces there. Like, on paper, you look at it and go, why doesn't this team perform better? And I look at the next month, West Coast at home, Bulldogs at home, Richmond and Melbourne. They should be winning those 4 and winning them well with what they've got at their disposal. So there's something not quite right.
You still think it's a premiership list?
Well, I actually didn't tip him in my 8 at the start of the year because I think to myself, I see it, and the names, but I just don't see the delivery on it. So,
and you've been proven right.
Oh, well, so far, but their effort was good. But for whatever reason, they just don't perform to the level they need to.
And the effort of the Swans was pretty good, particularly in the coaching box as well, with Dean Cox sort of playing around with McCartan back and forth.
Yeah, I was pleased for a young coach. You know, he's not young in terms of only a couple of games. But Inexperience, yeah. But to not be too brave to say, I've trained with McCartan all off-season, and to send him back where he had 4 goals kicked on him, but still think he's a good backman.
We love to see inspired picks late in the draft and giving guys a shot at AFL footy, even at the age of 24. And Riley Boss, 24-year-old mature pick at pick 41, Albury via Werribee. And he had some of the biggest moments in this game. The scores are always tight, an arm wrestle. But look at this. Absolutely laces this on the left foot. A great ball user, as I mentioned, part of that Werribee premiership side. But the composure here, 3 minutes to go, sidesteps fast Fred there, and look at that. That is brave ball use. But this is my favourite.
This is better.
This is better. Ground ball under pressure.
You're still
takes
behind.
it, has the awareness, throws down a bounce, and look at this. Just lobs it over the top. That is ball use 101. So brave selection, second gamer, stood up, and that's how you win the trust of your teammates.
It was great vision.
It was awesome.
Fantastic from Riley Boss. Damo, I got to say, I love watching Chris Scott press conferences because win, lose or draw, you know you're always going to be entertained. But he was at his deflective best on the weekend.
Yeah, he was. I mean, we make observations on this side of the fence, don't we, about what we see about other footy clubs, and he makes them back on the media. And look, you can't say he's wrong. We're not going to say we're wrong. He's not going to say he's wrong. But it is good viewing, though, when he does go down this particular path in this way.
Like, so forget all the cliches that you hear from commentators that don't know what they're talking about around intensity. I just thought they were clean.
Was there an intensity issue potentially in the first quarter? Is that something that stands out to you?
I mean, if you want to be one of those guys, I'd suggest you don't.
I don't reckon there's anything wrong with it. I reckon it's good to have a little bit of argy-bargy in those situations. And he's going to back himself, and certain media will back their views and express those views, but it's all good.
What are all the commentators that don't know what they're talking about?
Yeah, and
felt
that
pointed.
Yeah, Patrick Dangerfield, I'm really interested in him. Like, he's going to finish the rest of his career, you think, more so as a forward, and he can play for another 2 or 3 years as a forward. But to truly be effective, he has to. Can you still improve your kicking at his age? Maybe not, but I still think he blows too many chances. So I've even been critical of Bontempelli in this sense, but this was 35 out, and he didn't make the distance. So if you are going to be a forward, yes, he'll impact with bang crash, but he's not a great finisher for someone of his quality as a footballer. So I think, can he kick 35 goals a season if he becomes a permanent forward? Well, he needs to finish better than he currently does.
And Jimmy, what you saw with the Saints, is that a trustable display of what they can show for the remainder of the year?
I've never considered the Saints unreliable under Ross the Boss. They've been beaten on talent and pretty much depth, and they've gone searching for that. That's why they're throwing the big offers. You know, they've got senior players in amongst the young group. So I never think them as unreliable. I think some games they just get beaten on talent and a bit of their own ball use, which shoots them in the foot. But we all know Ross Lyon's sides, well organised, well drilled, and I've touched on this a couple of times. I like their young core. They've just got to keep it together.
Coming up next on Footy Classified, Lloydie is back with another edition of the Sledgehammer. Plus, of course, we have the old favourites, good call, bad call, the cook, and a whole lot more.
Melbourne had a day they'd love to forget yesterday, and it was due to their indecision. So it went on and on and on yesterday. So this is some indecision. Harry Sharp there. No awareness all day, the Melbourne Footy Club. Tom McDonald on the last line of defence. Of course, you got to know someone's coming. That was just, again, this one. Sparrow, no awareness. And then we finish off with this one, which was the worst than Petty. Last quarter, North growing in confidence, holding the ball all over. So they coughed up 4 goals really poorly. why do you play in front defenders these days? Because there's no push in the backs anymore, but too many players want to take front position. I'd be getting behind now as a defender because you can push them in the back. But all these players like Petty, why are you taking that position for?
You're not allowed to push him in the back, Lloyd.
I know, but I reckon I see 1, 2 maximum around. They just refuse to pay them. Now look at this. Hands in the back, push. So why are they playing in front is beyond me. So Sam Darcy, toughest matchup in football. He's an absolute nightmare. 208 centimetres, reach, takes it at the highest point, and he was too good for Moore, who tried his guts out. So these are some of the marks. What I would be doing is identify the weakest link on the opposition team. A bit like this. Jeremy Howe, if Harms kicks 4 on you, good luck. But don't get beaten by what you know. Come off, double, triple team him. That's what the rest of the competition must do on Sam Darcy in this time. LDU, he's North's best player. This is an unbelievable bit of play. So he drew 2 players to come to him. So there's Howes. So watch him not give the ball too early, dance around, and that was Petty to allow for the young fella, McKercher, to kick that goal of footy. Ashcroft, I'm putting him on notice, the 1-2 king. So is he looking to beef up his numbers for his betterment? So there's a player there, even give it to your brother. But he often is looping up handballs to get the ball back, but he isn't for the betterment of his team. So I could have shown a number of these over the course of 12 months. So he's on notice with that. And Jordan De Goey, unforgivable. When you don't get a pre-season done, often efforts like this happen. Broken tackle, and you walk. So you get away with it when you win a game, but I'm also going to get you when you lose a game. Oh, sorry, when you win a game, because that wasn't good enough.
Sledgehammer absolutely flying, and you know that's the case, Damo, because he's got someone on notice.
Yeah.
Sledgehammer's got someone...
A Norm Smith medalist on notice.
Norm Smith medalist on notice. Port Adelaide and the coaching handover and the succession plan's been on notice for a little while now. Their head of footy, Chris Davies, didn't take too kindly to some of the criticism on the weekend.
What would your perspective have been about that game if the succession plan hadn't been announced? You would still be critical of our performance. What I understand is that this gives you and the people in the media another thing to talk about, which I totally accept. But the reality is, I would suggest the criticism of our performance in round 1 would have actually come whether we've announced whatever succession plan is in place or not.
He's very level-headed, Chris. Yep. One of the calmest speakers in footy. And I think he's right, Damo, but the point is they have put a target on their back by virtue of the succession plan.
Sam, I look at it very differently, and you and I have differing views on it. They made a decision. They're not going to back away from it, and I think it's a respectful decision and one that needs to be respected because they're not going to change it until it's mathematically impossible in 2025 to make the finals.
But they made a decision not to make a decision. They made a decision not to stick with their current coach and not to give it to the next guy.
But Sam, they've made a decision that Ken's the coach and he's going to stay that way.
What will you say, though, if they can't make finals at round 16?
Well, they've got their man, haven't they? Yeah, well, if they can't make finals at round 16, I think they make the decision.
But they don't have their man because he's not coach.
He's their coach for next year.
He's not coach now. So what is
But it's pretty obvious when he is coach, when Ken's not.
Okay. Well,
I don't see it as drastically and dramatically as others. And I think people lost their minds over what they were saying after one game into the new deal that they announced publicly.
Tigers had a good first week. The backup was a little harder.
Well, it's always going to be difficult when you've got so much young talent, and of course it's probably back to what we expected. And Port Adelaide were smarting. Of course, they put in such a poor performance, and they were always going to rebound. And they're difficult on their home deck, Port. And this is nothing new from Port Adelaide. They can get a hold of sides.
They certainly can. They've got the Bombers on Thursday night at Marvel Stadium. Good call, bad call is up next on Footy Classified. Welcome back to Footy Classified. Jimmy Bartell continues to demand the new ball. Jimmy, you can't legislate for ruckman. Good call, bad call?
Sort of a good call here, Sam. Let's take a look at Luke Jackson right on quarter time and his skipper's response, Alex Pearce. Florent kicks the ball through. Luke Jackson, you've got 180 metres going the other direction. Why are you punching it for a score in such a close game? Alex Pearce going, mate, learn the rules, you big fella.
I like it. Hey, Sam, even the players were confused by the jumper clash at the MCG on Saturday. Good call, bad call?
It's a great call. Optical call, astute call. I know we're all supposed to genuflect at the altar of the AFL for just about everything, and usually I do. But this is a $1 billion sport. How many different jumpers do you need to make sure that you do not have a jumper clash? It isn't that difficult. Sort it out.
Damo. Andrew Bassett might want to park his equalisation crusade for a few years yet. Good call, bad call.
That's an excellent call, Lordo, because not too far away from draft age are some offspring belonging to Nick Revold, to Stewie Lowe, to Ozzie Jones, to Lenny Hayes, to Joey Montagna, Sam Gilbert, Jimmy Gwilt. They're all there on the weekend for this game against the Cats. So he might just want to back off a little bit.
Lloydie, off the back of that, the sons of the Saints aren't the only ones who need to grow up at St Kilda.
Bad call by you, Jimmy. I used to love some hang time in the rooms at Williamstown when I watched my brothers.
Oh, you did
We'll get that up in the next few weeks. This man, I think he's a bit old for that, though. This man. Come on, Jack, you've got to... Like wearing footy jumpers at the AFL, you've got to stop trying to get hang time at that age.
Jimmy, City Hall has got its priorities wrong. Good call, bad call?
A bit of a nothing call, bit of an unsure call, bit of a confused call here, Sam. We'll just see each week and wait till Monday and we'll go, oh, really? That's the sort of call it'll be. We don't know any better. I reckon Lob was fine there. This one's an interesting one. That's not really a tackle. And Burns goes down, so I think we'll still be confused call.
Sam, this one's back to you. Honesty is the best policy.
Good call, Damo. Great call. And Steel Sidebottom taught us that on the weekend.
Yeah, well, I mean, I shit myself there in the middle of the ground there and probably cost us the goal. Yeah, I was clearly on and, yeah, probably just wasn't fully committed. Probably felt a little bit of that perceived pressure and definitely had a look. Libbo did remind me, he's just asked, you might have a bit of poo in your jock there, I reckon, mate.
Did he really?
Which is great. To go and kick that last one was obviously nice.
Geez, that's refreshing.
Amazing. Brilliant. Owned it.
That's exactly what you want from
himself. Brilliant. Damo, the AFL is losing the code battle in more ways than one. But before you answer, here is Peter V'landys on Triple M.
We really worry about ourselves and we measure ourselves on traditional metrics like people turning up to games, people watching, how long they watch for, how many people play and where they play.
The actual fact.
Or we just call them traditional metrics.
Oh, right.
No,
Look, the AFL have always looked down their nose at rugby league. They treat us as second-class citizens. It's obvious we've got them rattled. We have a thing called Magic Round. All of a sudden, there's a gather round. I thought, what are they gathering? Sticks and stones? I read in the paper this week that they've got this new investment policy. It's the NRL's investment policy. Keep copying us. You won't beat us, but you can keep copying us. That's fine.
It's a bad call, Lotto, because they are winning the metrics. What they are losing, though, this is where it may be a bad call, is that they're losing the theatrics attached to it. V'landys has got them covered.
Yes.
Lloydie, your calls for the end of Cuddly Ross have fallen on deaf ears.
Good call, Kissy Rossi call, actually. Here's Rossi after the game. They were up and about. What a win. And Rossi's just kissing the back of the head. So he's a changed man. And so he should be happy after a brilliant win.
And he should be asking whatever Cal Wilkie needs. Drive him home. Does he want a chocky milk, a pie?
Foot massage.
Yeah.
Kissy and Cuddly Ross.
Yeah. I don't like it.
I like it. It's a good pick-up from you. I'm still going to go with Peter V'landys. What are they gathering? Sticks and stones. Anyway, we digress. The closing cook is up next on Footy Classified.
Before I get to who I'm cooking, I just want to show you something I said on the Sunday Footy Show yesterday. They get on fine, but I was concerned during the week, and I'm sure, I know we don't show each other's text messages, but I'm going to on this occasion because it's very light-hearted. But here was TJ during the week said, well done, Nath, because Nath made the best side of the last 25 years at Footscray Western Bulldogs.
Private messages, Lord.
Look at Brownie's emoji. He's sticking the fingers up, and I've said TJ was giving you a pat on the back, Nath. Anyway, so that was a bit of banter on the Sunday Footy. You saw how light that was. Well, I got a shock today when Damo said, look, you've made the news.com.au. So I'm cooking new news.com.au. So this was the story they wrote up. Matthew Lloyd leaks private chat in live TV betrayal.
Look at your face.
On the old Haileybury chestnut when I was in trouble then. And then they then went on to naming a few names. And they went like Brownie was a chocolate brownie, so they spelled that wrong. they spelled Damo's name wrong. It should be an A, shouldn't it, Damo?
Yeah.
Instead of an E. So
it's not Lloydo, it's Lordo.
Yeah. Yeah, and then look at some of the words they used to dress this up. So this is exposed, hostile, disbelief, brutal, unthinkable, onslaught, cardinal sin.
Wow.
So it was a sad, sad day for news.com.au. So you're on the gun and I'm cooking you tonight. So
you're obviously high on the click register. The very.
I was going to say, you know, the funniest thing about that is that it was probably the most read article of the day. Football betrayal.
You spent one day in my shoes the last 18 months, Louise.
Yeah, very good point, Jimmy.
Very true.
Damo, what are you looking out for this weekend?
Look, it's the last game of round 3. There's a lot of pressure on the coach of the Fremantle Footy Club,
already.
Justin Longmuir. Well, yeah, with the 0-2 start and rejuvenated Eagles, if they can reproduce some of what they showed against Brisbane in those hot conditions, it's going to be game on, and therefore they need a result, the Dockers.
So are they the story off the top on Monday if they get done by the Eagles?
In the event of a loss, yeah. As you look at the round 3 fixturing, to me that's the big one.
Mine's the Blues Friday night. The Blue Boys. Friday night be the Western Bulldogs.
But you don't back their list. You don't think they have a good list, or you'd expect them to lose?
No, they're good enough to win games of footy. They're good enough to win games of football, and I hope they play the right way.
Mine's trying to juggle 2 cracking games that are starting both at 7:35. What am I watching? We should have 2 absolute belters. We could have separated them by half an hour, 15 minutes.
I tell you what, there's no clash tomorrow night, live 8:30 on
there is
Gem.
a clash.
No, there's no clash. Well, there might be a clash if Luke Beveridge is involved, but he's on the panel. The Western Bulldogs coach. He's alongside Eddie, Hurdy and Tom Morris. Yeah, that's right. It's Tom and Luke Beveridge to face off. And, of course, that's live, 8:30 on Gem, and you can catch up 9 on the main channel at 10:30. Thanks for your company tonight. We'll see you soon.